Good morning to all. My name is Cesar and I'm the Content Director for Americas. I'd like to send out a warm welcome to everybody joining this webinar today, in which we will discuss LNG trends and perspectives in Latin America. We understand that this is a very difficult time for everyone. We hope that you are all in good health and taking care. And of course, we appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Our regional energy editor, Michael Place, will begin the webinar shortly with a brief presentation of our LNG Intelligence Series report, which was published this week. We will then hold a discussion panel in which we will talk with Celso Silva, the Executive Vice President of Golar Power in Latin America, Freddy Obando, who is AES Corp's Vice President for LNG in Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean, Patricia Martínez, the Latin America President of Enerflex, and Alvaro Rios, who is Director and Partner at Gas Energy Latin America. I would like to remind all participants that they are now in listen-only mode. Questions can be submitted at any time using the chat function on the right side of the screen. Depending on the time, we will endeavor to answer all your questions at the end of the discussion panel. So I'll leave you now with Michael.
Thanks, Cesar. In March this year, Centrais Elétricas de Sergipe, or Celso, received approval from Brazil's power regulator, Enel, to begin commercial operations at its 1.5 gigawatt Porto de Sergipe LNG to power plant, located in northeastern Brazil. It is the largest integrated natural gas and electricity generation project in Latin America. The 50-50 joint venture between Golar Power and E-Brazil marked a new milestone in the development of the LNG to power market in Latin America and the Caribbean, and follows in the footsteps of AES Corp, which in 2018 launched its own LNG-fired thermoelectric complex in Panama. A handful of similar projects are under development in other parts of the region. The increase in global gas production, which has largely been driven by the US shale boom, has led to rapid growth in the number of liquefaction plants, and with it, the global supply of liquefied natural gas. With highly flexible supply and competitive prices, LNG has become an attractive integrated alternative for electricity generation projects at a time when natural gas is presented as a cleaner and cheaper alternative to coal and liquid fuels. Natural gas has also positioned itself as a reinforcement for solar and wind energy, and especially in South America as a backup to hydroelectric generation, which has been strongly affected by changes in rainfall patterns. LNG made its first foray into the Latin American and regional energy market in 2000, when the Peñuelas regasification plant began operating in Puerto Rico. Since then, LNG import and regasification terminals have been built in Mexico, Chile, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and Panama. Meanwhile, Peru became the first LNG exporting country in South America when the Melchorita liquefaction plant began operating south of Lima in 2010. However, Latin America's first LNG export facility was actually the Atlantic LNG plant in Point Fortin in Trinidad and Tobago in 1999. At the end of 2019, there were 14 regasification plants in operation in Latin America and the Caribbean, to which 2 more plants were added in the first half of 2020. Celso's Porto de Sergipe project in Brazil and New Fortress Energy's terminal in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Latin America is the 3rd largest LNG market in the world after Asia and Europe, although it had just 4% of the share of global net imports in 2019. LNG's attractiveness continues to grow in the region, and there are several projects under development, with Brazil leading the way, as you can see on the slide. Among those in the late planning stage is the Pacific LNG project at the Buenaventura port in Colombia, for which final bidding and contract terms are expected to be published this week. So with that, we're going to move on to our discussion panel. As Cesar mentioned earlier, we have the pleasure of being joined by Celso Silva, the Executive Vice President of Golar Power in Latin America, Freddy Obando, who is AES Corp's Vice President for LNG in Mexico, Central America and the Caribbean. Patricia Martínez, the Latin America President of Enerflex. And Alvaro Rios, who is a Director and Partner at Gas Energy Latin America. So we're going to jump straight into this because we have a lot to talk about and only a limited amount of time. Celso, good morning. Let's start with you. How did Brazil's program to open up the gas market for private investors impact Golar's decision to expand its footprint in the country?
First of all, good morning to everybody, and would like to thank you, Michael and Cesar and Ben Americas for the invitation of this webinar. And let's go straight to the answer. Golar Power midterm planning is based on the current and the existing legal and regulatory framework in the current marketplace. However, Golar Power is also aware about the revision of the natural gas legislation, in which transportation, distribution, and marketing are the main topics that may help Brazil to expand the natural gas market. The access to the natural gas transportation network is one of our priorities, mainly because we have just few terminals under development and already in operation here in Brazil. So Golar Power is working together with the gas transportation companies such as TAG and DBG in order to handle this topic.
Okay, thank you, Celso. Just a follow-up question to that. In March this year, as we mentioned, Celso, which is Golar's joint venture with eBrazil, received approval from the National Power Sector Regulator, ANEEL, to begin commercial operations at the Porto Sergipe LNG to power plants. How have the first few months of operations gone at the facility, and has it been affected, and how has it been affected by the coronavirus pandemic?
Thanks for the question. It was a really rush to put Celso online at the right time. I mean, January 1st. But we conclude successfully the power plant and the LNG terminal test and commissioning at the right time. And the plant was dispatched by the ONS, the national operator of the system, once during this pandemic period. However, due to the low energy demand in the country, the product is in standby mode. The product was designed not to be in the base load, but standby. And it's ready to run whenever the system requires power. Celso and Golar Power did not face any issues with the LNG terminal and the FSRU operation, the power plant operation during this pandemic period. This is the most efficient power plant in the country. We are talking about 62%, 63% efficiency just after the test period. So this plant is really a game changer in the existing natural gas power generation in this country.
That's good to know, Celso. Thank you very much for your contribution there. We'll come back to you in a few minutes with some more questions, but let's move on now to Freddy Obando, AES Corp's LNG Vice President for Mexico, Central America and the Caribbean. Freddy, good morning. We'd like to ask you, first of all, about AES Cologne, the LNG to power hub there, which began operating in 2018. Why has it been such a strategically important project, and what has it meant for the energy sector, not only in Panama, but also the Central America region?
Thank you, and good morning. I'm very excited to be here, and looking at the number of assistants and attendants to the school, I'm just overwhelmed of the level of attention that the LNG is having in our region, right? So I would like to thank BN Americas for allowing AES to share the development of this important project for not only for Panama, but for Central America as well. So we aim to radically improve the environmental and economic condition of many small liquid petroleum fuel consumers in the Caribbean, Central America, and the northern part of South America by substituting dirty and often expensive fuel oil or diesel with clean burning natural gas. As you mentioned, the importance of AES Colón LNG hub is based on its strategic location, allowing us to reach different markets with a competitive supply and taking advantage of the already built infrastructure. That's very important. Located at the entrance of the Panama Canal, it is well positioned for supply LNG vessels as their bunker fuel. And its proximity with the US Gulf ensures access to an abundant resource at just a couple of days of navigation. As I think you mentioned, this project is already changing the energy landscape for Panama. Just to give you a number, in 2019, we served 25% of the country's power demand using natural gas. This is truly amazing to be achieved by a single project on its first full years of operations. Furthermore, we are just using around 1/4 of the total capacity of the terminal to supply AES power plant, leaving 75% to serve other uses as industries, power generation, transportation, and bunkering, as I said before. So finalizing the question, 2 years ago, I just moved to Panama and I was invited to an event. I think Alvaro was there as well. And I coined the following phrase. I said, finally for Central America, it's not the chicken and egg situation anymore for having access to LNG. AES has brought the chicken and is looking to serve many, many eggs in the region.
Excellent. That's a great phrase. We heard Celso mention that the impact of the coronavirus has been felt a little bit in Brazil with the project at Porto de Sergipe, but that the project is obviously the complex is in good shape and that it's not going to be affected long term. What is the outlook with Colón and also AES Dominicana and the Dominican Republic? How has it been affected by the pandemic, and have you seen a significant fall in activity at both of those ports, and when do you envisage a recovery?
Sure. So the issue is that the energy market was oversupplied even before the COVID-19 hit us. So that means that there was more supply than demand, right? Which in turn is creating very low pricing in today's market. To give you an idea, according to Platts, on July, the United States LNG liquefaction capacity is operating somewhere 30% of its nameplate capacity, right? We are calculating more than 100 LNG cargoes being canceled on the last 3 months. And as you mentioned, in the region, we haven't escaped such reality as the power demand in Panama has dropped significantly. So the lowest point was on the 3rd week of June. So we saw a drop of 15.6% versus the last period in 2019, which is very important. And that situation has caused that our LNG consumption is lower than anticipated. And in fact, we have canceled some volume for this year and working with our supplier to adjust the delivery plans for the year. Along the same lines, our nat gas business in the Dominican Republic, we saw pretty much an immediate drop in the industrial demand in a level of more than 50% in May during the pandemic, which is recovering, I would say, really fast, closing June with something like 85% of the expected demand. In general terms and throughout the region, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused the governments and private companies to shift their focus from the security of supply and sustainability goals to a more basic stage. So we think that everyone now is in a sort of a survival mode, right? The current focus is to protect the people and try to reimburse the business models in order to be able to survive. So my view, natural gas demand will take some time to recover, and government actions and related projects will definitely face some delays under this scenario.
Okay, Freddy, that's very interesting. Thanks for that contribution. We'll be coming back to you in a few minutes as well. On this panel, we also have Patricia Martínez, who is the Latin America President for Enerflex. Patricia, good morning. Maybe you can tell us about some of the company's most important projects in Latin America. and also what you believe are key growth opportunities for developers of midstream gas infrastructure.
Good morning, Michael, and good morning, everyone in the audience. Thanks for having me this morning. Enerflex engineers, manufacturers, build, own, and operate natural gas infrastructure across the region and globally. When I mean natural gas infrastructure, we play a meaningful role anywhere in the value chain of the gas from the wellhead with early production facilities to power generation. Along the way, we compress, treat, and process the gas to extract full value of the molecule. As an example of key projects, Michael, earlier this month, we started operations on, actually was the first non-Petrobras owned natural gas processing facility in Brazil. I think this is a big milestone in the market, and as Celso spoke about, great things are happening in the opening up of the new gas market in Brazil. This facility is in Bahia State, was designed, built, is owned and operated by Enerflex. We have a long-term take-or-pay contract with the producer who in turn is selling its gas to the local distributor. Again, this is a big milestone in that market, and we look forward to many projects like that in Brazil. In general, in our view, the Latin American region presents great opportunities through the entire natural gas value chain. Particularly, as has been mentioned already in the panel, natural gas plays and will continue to play a prominent role as a new generation fuel of choice, not only as a replacement of less environmentally friendly forms of fuel, but also as a baseload fuel for wind and solar, etc. So great opportunities in the region to develop midstream infrastructure that can in turn transform the natural gas in its many desired forms, from LNG, CNG, pipeline distribution, etc., to be transported and consumed throughout the region.
Excellent. That project in Brazil sounds very interesting. We look forward to hearing more about that in the future and other projects of that type. Can rising natural gas production coexist, do you believe, Patricia, with investments in LNG import infrastructure? There's often an argument that it's either one or the other, but what are your views on that, especially, I guess, in view of rising gas production in Argentina and Brazil?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I absolutely believe they can. I believe that a well-balanced portfolio of natural gas resources and different sources provides the much-needed resilience to the entire region's energy matrix. Today, I think we know pretty much, and you showed in your map at the beginning, all major natural gas consumer markets have installed LNG import facilities that allows them to capitalize on low-priced, abundant LNG during those times. I think we're living right now one of those times. And then give them, the countries, the opportunity to make strategic decisions on the use of its own reserves and production as they see fit. I believe that both Argentina and Brazil, mainly given the large natural gas reserves, have great potential to become meaningful LNG exporters. And as a matter of fact, several of the projects that we're developing in those markets are directly linked to future export projects. Again, in Brazil, we are currently, along with a local partner, we owned roughly 2 BCF of environmentally permitted capacity to build natural gas infrastructure in the Macaé area. In principle, we are striving to hopefully have the first module operational in 2022. But in principle, this production will serve domestic markets, but obviously when the full capacity is built in the next 10 years, will have to be anchored on gas exports. And we truly believe that will happen. Obviously, global competitiveness and seasonality are key factors, and that will provide a key role in defining the future of these projects in Latin America. But the potential is definitely there, Michael.
Excellent. Maybe in a few years' time, we'll be talking more about exports from Latin America than LNG imports. I guess only time will tell, but it's certainly a very interesting topic. So thanks for your contribution there, Patricia. We'll come back to you as well a little bit later in the webinar. Let's move on now to Alvaro Rios, who is the managing partner for Gas Energy Latin America. Good morning, Alvaro. We know how important Brazil is as a destination for Bolivia's gas. How is this market being impacted, and how will it be impacted in the future by Brazil's expansion of natural gas supply through both production and LNG?
Well, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Michael and Cesar, thanks for putting this together and inviting me. And cheers there to Celso, Patricia, and Freddy. Well, hopefully, Freddy will see each other again soon. 10 years ago, it was very, very difficult to foresee what is happening now. I mean, Bolivian gas was basically the only available gas that was for that market and for Brazilian market. And of course, within the past 10 years, not only pre-salt gas is available to the Brazilian market, but also LNG with a global supply that has come from various places and mainly from the United States has come strongly into the shores of Brazil. So now Bolivia has to face with reality. We have Bolivia declining reserves have to go and compete with LNG that is becoming available in a market that is reasonably opening with the abandoning of monopoly in the natural gas industry by Petrobras. I would say that Brazilians were paying the highest gas price in the world, and the only way to lower those costs is by allowing competition. And I think that's what's happening, and that's why Celso's project and Patricia's projects are coming on stream. And I would say that Bolivian gas has to go and compete with LNG and also with pre-salt production. And of course, as Patricia said, I will agree that in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see natural gas exports from the region. So Bolivia has to change its mindset if it wants to keep some of that Brazilian market, which will grow because lower prices. We will see lower prices in the market, which because higher prices were damaging demand in Brazil.
Okay, thanks, Alvaro. Bolivia's other key gas export market is, of course, Argentina. Investment and production has been declining at the Vaca Muerta formation over the past year. What will be the impact of this on the country's gas imports, not only piped gas from Bolivia, but also demand for LNG at Argentina's Escobar receiving facility?
There's a saying, there's my saying that says in Argentina, everything happens and nothing happens at the same time. Okay, so Vaca Muerta is still for us a very, it's a great shale with a lot of great geology. But what will happen with Vaca Muerta is still to be seen. I mean, we saw some increase in production, basically from Tech Petrol. They rose almost 16 to 18 million cubic meters very quickly. And there's other players there who can raise the production very quickly. And of course, that can compete with Bolivian gas in a short period of time. But over the surface of Vaca Muerta, we have a lot of uncertainties like politics, exchange rates. And right now, as we speak, the production that went up, it's on decline now because, as you know, shale production goes up very quickly, but also goes down very quickly. And so if fracking activity and drilling activity in Argentina does not recover very quickly, as a matter of fact, more LNG and more natural gas from Bolivia will be needed. So we will see what happens over the next 4, 5, 6 months. The new government is promising a lot of things. Gas Plus 4 program, a new hydrocarbon law, and we will see what happens. So Argentina is still in a big uncertain, and I can't predict. It's like predicting the price of oil 5 years from now.
Exactly, and if anything is unpredictable in
Excuse me?
America. It's
Hello?
Argentina. So thank you for your contribution, Alvaro. We'll come back to you in a moment. So we're going to focus again on Golar Power's initiatives in Brazil. Celso, Golar has recently formed partnerships with BR Distribuidora and Galileo Technologies, which includes a plan to produce bio-LNG using biomethane from landfills in Sao Paulo. Why is this small-scale LNG market attractive in Brazil, and what are Golar's future plans in this segment?
Actually, we recognize, I mean, the people that work for Golar here, we need to be humble. We'll not be able to do everything we need without the proper partners. So our strategy here in Brazil is based on 3 pillars. 95% of the Brazilian cities do not have access to natural gas. So this is the first one. Brazil imports 25% of the diesel consumption. So this is the second pillar. It means, it's almost 30 million cubic meters of natural gas equivalent. And the third one, Brazil has a huge potential of gas production from onshore stranded natural gas fields, as well as bio-LNG from landfills. So based on these 3 pillars, we recognize, okay, we need to have a partnership with someone that could take care of the logistics to reach those cities. And BR currently has almost 8,000 gas stations in this country. So why not do partnership with them in order just to supply heavy vehicles with LNG rather than to use diesel? So this is one thing. And regarding Galileo partnership, we all know that they have a proven liquefaction technology. Of course, it will allow us to produce LNG from a small gas source and ship to the market. So that's basically what we have in mind and what we are doing right now.
Excellent, excellent. We'll be keeping our eye on both of those partnerships and developments there. So thank you for that response. What can we expect for Brazil's LNG market after the privatization of Petrobras's assets and also the regulatory update currently being implemented by the federal government in Brazil?
This question might take long and would be, a good discussion in one single webinar. It might take hours, but I'll try to be short. Newcomers are very important for the natural gas market expansion, such as Golar Power. Petrobras' roles and presences in gas transportation, distribution, and marketing in the last 20 years created the basis for this new marketplace. This marketplace will have multiple gas suppliers and multiple off-takers. So the new legislation and regulation will have to take this into consideration. And also, we all have to understand that we will need a transition period in which these players will have to work towards the upcoming challenge, jointly not only with the federal, but the state and all the other authorities, in order to set up the mid-long range plan for natural gas in Brazil. We will have a long road in front of us, but we will succeed.
Excellent. Maybe we can make that the next topic for our next webinar. It's a very good point you make there, Celso. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you again. We have some more questions for Freddy Obando, AES Corp's LNG Vice President from Mexico, Central America and the Caribbean. As we already mentioned, Freddy, LNG prices have fallen sharply as a consequence of plummeting global energy demand. How long do you expect prices to be depressed, and what impact will this low price environment have on existing facilities and those that are being planned? For example, Is it a deterrent for new liquefaction plants like IEnova's proposed Costa Azul export facility in Mexico? And is it a boost for perhaps for import initiatives like the Colombia Pacific LNG project? Or is this a very short-sighted way of thinking? Looks like we might have lost.
Well, to your question, I will mention three main, I would say. So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. So I think for I will mention three pillars or three issues as part of my response. So the weak prices that we are seeing in the market are the new normal. LNG prices will continue to converge and trend downwards at least from 2020 to 2025, which will impact the trade economics and routes of the whole market. We see that there will be a good 5 years of low price environment. That on one side, they're going to be good for the customers, not so good for the developers, right? So the second pillar is in the investment side. What we call the final investment decisions especially on the supply stack. So on everything related to liquefaction facilities is dropping to zero. So the absence of any FID in the US and globally in 2020 will be followed by limited capacity additions being sanctioned in the rest of the world. That actually means that from 5 to 6 years from now, there won't be any new projects coming online. So people may take decisions now, but they need to be aware that there could be some tightness in the next 5 to 6 years, right? And the third one is there's going to be some lasting scars on the demand side, right? Out of this COVID-19 crisis, new demand centers will be slower to emerge as three factors: capital constraints, the overall economic weakness, and additional, that is something we haven't touched a lot in this call, but the growing environmental pressure, right? That will slow infrastructure growth for sure. On our view, this is the new reality, and with an already oversupplied market, I think that the LNG market will take 5 years to fully recover, which, as I said before, is providing excellent opportunity for buyers. So there's always two sides of the story.
Excellent, thank you, Freddy. And what are some of the, if you want to share this information with us, what are some of the other markets in the Americas that you believe have high potential for LNG, either through import or export projects? And does AES have an eye on possible new projects in other countries in the region, despite the moment that we're in right now, obviously with the coronavirus pandemic? Hello, Freddy, are you with us?
Puerto Rico, Panama, El Salvador, and with ongoing developments. Yeah, I'm breaking out. Give me a second. Is that better?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right, I'm sorry for that. So I was mentioning that through the region, we are seeing positive news from Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Panama, El Salvador, with ongoing developments to increase the use of natural gas in those countries. But we are also following open, bidding efforts. I will categorize those in Aruba, Antigua, and even Jamaica for the Keystone area, along with other smaller tenders driven by industries committed to move to a more environmental friendly fuel. Latest announcement was from Ecuador, I think this week. We also in the press that Ecuador is trying to set an importing facility in the Machala area. So, as we see through the region, mainly all the new developments will be driven by electricity demand and the desire of the host countries to clean up their energy matrices, right? You also mentioned that if we are willing to jump in, so from AES standpoint, we are ready to support any of those projects. We are participating in some of the tenders as we speak. We believe that through our infrastructure and commercial agreements with suppliers, we can provide our customers with less expensive solutions that will be easier to finance, easier to build, and with competitive and flexible terms and conditions, right? So far, our business model is not necessarily to be an investment on those projects, but to be a facilitator in the adoption of the natural gas as new fuel. So our preference is to stay, to remain investing in the supply chain, but not necessarily in the projects themselves.
Okay, very interesting. Thanks for that, Freddy. Now we're going to go back to Patricia Martínez, the Latin America president of Enerflex. Patricia, if Argentina and Brazil are promising midstream markets because of investments in upstream gas development, what about Mexico and Colombia? Is there uncertainty among investors in Mexico because of the apparent backtracking of reforms that gave rise to new gas pipeline projects? And do you see encouraging signs in Colombia because of the government's stated desire to ramp up gas supply through local production and also through new LNG infrastructure like the Pacific LNG import terminal in Buenaventura? How do you see that situation, both for Mexico and Colombia?
Yeah, Mexico and Colombia are both obviously interesting natural gas markets in terms of potential for domestic production. However, they have a bit of a slight different dynamic. I believe Mexico's meaningful development of its own natural gas resources will be very challenged in the short term, particularly due to what you mentioned, not only the proximity to the United States and the vast interconnecting pipeline infrastructure that has been developed in the last 10 years, but also given the dynamics that Freddy just mentioned in terms of low price LNG for the short-term foreseeable future, next 5 years. And so Mexico will have access to low price gas to really balance its consumption needs. And so it's a matter of economics. I think it will be very challenging in the short term to make use of their own resources. On the other hand, I think Colombia has a need to increase reliance on natural gas for its energy matrix. And although the LNG infrastructure in the Pacific could partially achieve that, I think the country's topography and challenging access to consumption markets makes some business case for local production and associated gas utilization. I think you mentioned it, the government has been quite vocal during this current administration to advocate for environmentally responsible shale exploration and production as an important resource that could become a reality by 2025.
Very interesting. Thank you for that, Patricia. Another question for you. Is the electric power sector the key driver of gas demand going forward in Latin American markets, or does it depend on the country? Are there some countries, for example, where residential or industrial demand is the top priority for gas infrastructure expansion, even ahead of thermoelectric plants?
Yeah, we believe without a doubt power gen is a key driver for natural gas demand and will continue to be for the next 10 years. I believe the latest data published by Woodmac says that approximately 30 million of cubic meter a day of gas in the region will be used for power gen in the next 10 years. So, and this, by this, I don't mean only power gen connected to the grid of the major infrastructure, but also distributed power and behind the fence power, where the power is produced and consumed locally. And again, like I mentioned earlier, this clearly as a means to, and Celso made reference to this, to replace more expensive, less environmental friendly forms of fuel for industrial consumers, large and small, and also as a means of balance the grid and provide renewable sources sustainable in the future as the base load for wind and solar. So definitely, I think natural gas will be a key driver for gas demand in the next 10 years. And that, I think, all different forms of natural gas will play a meaningful role.
Excellent, Patricia. Thanks for that contribution. It's an exciting future in the region for the natural gas segment, that's for sure. We're going to move along to Alvaro Rios again, who is the managing partner, as we mentioned, of Gas Energy Latin America. Alvaro, Colombia's plans to to boost gas supply includes the new LNG import facility at Buenaventura, which we've already mentioned. The government is very close to launching a bidding process for that project, which includes the regasification terminal and also an associated pipeline. What are your thoughts about this project, and do you see the tender attracting strong interest from investors?
I would think so. Like Patricia said, shale is still an uncertainty. I mean, there is a program to drill some pilot wells and test for the environmental situation. However, that is still far away from development. And so shale gas to supply a 8-year supply that Colombia has. I mean, the reserve production is close to 8 years. And of course, Colombia is a country that uses, it has about 11 million users of gas, I believe. And also it has a lot of swing needs for natural gas, specifically for power sector. It has a similar trend to Brazil. So I would think that that the plant will have interest. We will see that shortly. And also these LNG projects, which are coming for supplying flex gas to the power market, also in the future will become suppliers of some industrial users, and also they will do a lot of small LNG, which of course all of you has driven costs dramatically, and you can go and compete in certain areas where infrastructure does not exist. So Colombia has, and I think in the next question I will complement with whatever we see happening in Venezuela.
Okay, we do have Venezuela as our next question. Can PDVSA, the state oil company there, and its partners export gas to Colombia using existing pipeline infrastructure? And can Venezuela be relied upon, more importantly, to guarantee supply given the country's political and economic problems and also the collapse of its oil industry?
You know that Gas Energy Latin America has the last consulting office in Venezuela. There's no more consulting firms, I think, there. But Antero Alvarado is our colleague there with a group of people that are helping us. And we are seeing a lot of interest on both sides. The government, actual government, is seeing that natural gas has to have a market. And with shortages of gasoline and with shortages of diesel and all these products, I mean, there's availability of natural gas in the western part of the country, in some parts of the eastern part of the country as well. And we are seeing an interest to bring some of this gas again into Colombia, but not driven by PDVSA, only driven by Eni, for example, in Repsol, that are sitting on Cardon 4 and bringing those reserves. There's a lot of challenges there. But I think medium term, we will see in Colombia a similar thing that is happening in Peru. We will see as oversupply market driven by new production, maybe from shale, new onshore production, and we will see LNG production, and we will see supplies of Venezuela's gas because there's plenty there. It's a matter of sitting down with them. Certain infrastructure already exists. So we will see that continuous drive of more natural gas into Colombia in creating a similar competing market to that is happening in Brazil.
Excellent, thank you, Alvaro. We'll be keeping an eye on that. That's certainly a very interesting development to see if PDVSA can move forward with those plans to, sorry, not only PDVSA, but the partners that they have and the private companies operating in Venezuela, if they can move forward with plans to export gas to Colombia. So thank you for that contribution. We're going to go back now to Celso Silva from Golar Power. Celso, Golar is also developing an LNG import terminal at the Suape port in Pernambuco state and an LNG to power project in Santa Catarina state in the south of Brazil. How are these projects progressing? And has financing been fully secured for these projects? And when could we see the start of commercial operations at both of those facilities?
Both projects are aiming to supply natural gas not only through the existing natural gas transportation system. As you may know, we have a bottleneck in the system in the southern part of Brazil. That's exactly where we placed this project in Santa Catarina. And it's the same for the state of Pernambuco. The current onshore production in the northeastern region of Brazil is declining very fast. And we believe that we can supply natural gas through LNG to replace this declined production. Moreover, the idea is also to ship natural gas to the interior of the states using, LNG in the wholesale market using ISO containers from those terminals. So this is our plan. Both projects are seeking to secure not only environmental permit, but whole set of permits this quarter, the third quarter of 20. And since we have the permitting, we can start construction by the end of this year. We depend on confirmation of the upcoming gas supply tenders from the local distribution companies in those states, but there is some free customer that's also interested for this natural gas. So, this product will be ready. We have access to resource to develop this product, and we don't have any issues related with finance, mainly because we don't have the permitting yet. But since we have, we're going to go through this whole process.
Great. That brings me to the next question I have about financing options for LNG projects over the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not sure if you want to answer this, Celso, or maybe perhaps one of the other panelists, but what are the best financing options for LNG projects in the next, I guess, in the short to medium term? And will financing become more difficult as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Actually, the project that we are developing in the northern part of Brazil in Barcarena, we are aiming to use, the local development banks, BNDES and Bank of Amazon, to finance this project. It's a little bit different for the project finance that we got for Sergipe project, but as far as we know, we don't have any problem with this process due to the COVID pandemic. So we rather use the local finance source, and then we might look abroad if necessary.
Okay, great. Thank you, Celso. So we're going to actually move on to the Q&A now. We have a lot of questions and only a very short amount of time, so we're going to try and do our best to get through these. Freddy, we have a question from one of our attendees directed to you. How do you foresee the development of small to medium LNG distribution from AES Panama to the neighbouring countries? Do you consider that it will be competitive against HFO for power generation, and to which extent?
That's a great question, and this is our main competitor throughout the region is the heavy fuel oil, right? And this is a very particular situation in the region where, this is one of the only regions, the few regions in the world that still is using heavy fuel oil, which is something that I think eventually the countries from a policy standpoint will need to consider, to somehow discourage. Because this is we see that from the maritime industry. So the IMO 2020 is starting to to avoid the use of that because of the sulfur level and so on. So so it's not very logic for the countries to bring that fuel on shore now. But it is a reality in the region, and that's we need to compete, right? We have been in the small and mid-scale market. I think that's where our sweet spot is, right? Because there is a combination between scale and the need for capital, right? So, and when we are talking about the small scale, something between anything in between 80 megs to 250 megawatts is on our what we call our sweet spot to do a small scale LNG facilities. So we will definitely be cheaper than a full scale facility, and a full scale terminal you need at least between 400 500 megs to be economic. So we can compete that there's a market for that, and each individual power system in the region is not very large enough to justify that 700 megs LNG to power project, right? So I think there's a place for us. And in terms of competitiveness, without giving it too much away, we are seeing we are putting together very attractive pricing, and it's not just because an AES. I think Celso mentioned this. We need to be humble as well, because we are being helped by local investors, and also we have been helped by the shipping industry as well. So now, this is a main difference between last 5 years. So we are seeing a small scale LNG vessels available in the market, which doesn't require the typical 15 to 20 year commitment, right? So people are willing to take speculative positions in a small scale vessels in order to develop the market, and we are seeing very, very competitive freight proposals from players in that. So combining our already built infrastructure with very competitive freight from these small scale vessels and less capital on the receiving countries, that's the recipe of success on our view.
Great, thank you, Freddy, and thanks to our attendee who asked that question. Another question we have, this is directed at all of the panel. I don't know who would feel more comfortable answering this, but the question is, what are the main challenges and opportunities faced from a social perspective in Latin America when building LNG projects, i.e. working with local communities, local content, social unrest, etc. Perhaps, Freddy, you can start perhaps with your view on that question.
Yeah, and as I said before, the main competitor was heavy fuel oil. Actually, now is also renewables, right? Because we are seeing this community push to get greener and greener, and especially in the islands, permitting a facility in any of the Caribbean islands are going to be a challenge, especially for the tourism and people. And if you look into details of everyone's planning for the energy sector, right, the expansion plan for the energy sector, everyone is looking to have a very large share of renewables, right, without having the firm supply to back that up, right? So yeah, we do see an issue there, especially because the expectations of the community is going 100% green, and in our cases, permitting a facility which requires usually a port and a thermal power plant, it is a challenge.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that response, Freddy, and thank you again to our attendee who asked that question. We're running out of time, unfortunately. We do have some more questions which are related to LNG and some that aren't directly related to LNG, but we will respond to all of our questions by email. So thank you to our attendees for your contribution there. That's all we have time, unfortunately. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us in this webinar, and a special thank you to our panelists, Alvaro Rios, Patricia Martínez, Freddy Obando, and Celso Silva for their participation and their insight into Latin America's LNG industry. We'd like to remind everyone that our LNG Intelligence Series report is now available on our platform to subscribers, who we thank for their loyal support of our service and for trusting in being America's. We'd like to invite those who aren't subscribers to our service to please consider doing so. Check out our website, and we'd certainly be looking forward to working with you going forward. So thank you again for your time. Please take care on behalf of everyone at Being America's. It's goodbye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Clients change, businesses change. The world is transforming faster than ever, and the opportunities are there, waiting for us. Over 20 years of digital innovation have turned us into the leading business intelligence provider in Latin America. BN Americas has a database with thousands of industrial projects, company profiles, key contacts, news, reports, and data, all in one easy-to-use platform. Every day, more than 50 on-the-ground journalists and experts analyze the region's major industries. Explore projects that feature opportunities for your business. Find the companies participating in those projects and connect with their decision makers. Make the best business decisions with all the facts and insights you need about the industries that are driving the Latin American economy. Get timely reports with the latest news about projects, regulations, and investments. Stay on top of the business trends. Find out what the risks and opportunities are for your business by reading the reports and analysis of our on-the-ground experts throughout Latin America. Redefine your business strategy and choose the path to success. BN Americas, connecting opportunities.